Beautiful. Okay, well, thank you to everyone for coming. I appreciate Melissa for being here and Marilyn and for Leila as well. Um I guess I'll let you guys take it away and just kind of see if anyone has any questions in general or I definitely one thing that I definitely would love to like hear from you guys specifically and I think everyone because we had a meeting before and we were all just kind of like talking about like AI and like how that's kind of being integrated in the workplace. So I definitely would love to hear from technical writers in the field kind of talk about that and your experience for all three of you. So if you wanna take it away right now and introduce yourselves maybe first for
Yeah,
everyone?
that'd be great. Intros makes a lot of sense. Hello, everyone. My name is Melissa Olds. I'm a tech writer at L3Harris. I've been with the company for almost 5 years. I started as an intern in 2000. I did the summer internship and then was converted into a full-time employee when I graduated from UCF with my tech comm degree in the spring of 2021. So I've been doing tech writing for the company for all that time. I also took on a group leader role, which is a functional management position. And right now I'm kind of transitioning from doing a lot of task type technical writing and moving more into some management, tech writing, project management stuff. So having a good time. Leela, you want to go next?
Yeah, I can go next. I have a cat crawling all over me, so she
Great.
might pop in. But my name is Leela. I'm also a technical writer at L3 Harris. I started after my internship in the summer of 2024. Then I did some part-time while I was at UCF. And then I transitioned to my full-time role this May, so relatively new. I'm part of our college grad program and it's been a lot of fun so far. So I've I've enjoyed my experience. And then Marilyn, you can go ahead and introduce yourself.
Hey everyone, I'm Marilyn. I was the 2025 intern for the technical writing role at L3 Harris, and I started full-time in August. But before that, I was also at UCF, and I studied technical communication, and I minored in IT, and I was also a part of FTC for about a year.
Yeah, I guess I should say as well. I was also part of FTC.
I was gonna say, how could you forget?
Yeah, I should probably say that. Yes, I after or right before graduating in 2025, I was the vice president alongside the wonderful Chantal, which I'm sure many of you guys have talked to. But yeah, the club was definitely a great experience and helped me a lot with getting into this position. So it's always good to stay active.
Okay, so you mentioned you had a question about AI in technical communication. Do you mind if I jump into that a little bit?
Sure, absolutely.
Awesome. Marilyn can probably offer some additional insight. She's been to a few of the presentations I'm about to talk about, but the one that comes to mind the most, we have a program that's running up in Virginia now. They run an S1000D program, which means they're writing in structured authoring. I don't remember which authoring tool they're using, but they've got about 5 different tools running at the same time. One of the things that they've been able to implement alongside, they just built up their technical documentation database within the last, I'd say, 3 years, and they've been building on that steadily. And one of the things that they've been talking about a lot lately is how AI is being able to get implemented into those tools to actually go out, pull information and build pieces, build data modules for the program based on the information that's out there in the database. So it's definitely happening. AI is showing up more so. let me back up and say, I think a lot of us know how to use AI in kind of how do we use it as a helper? How do we use those large language models? How do we ask it to be like a really fancy Google? That I think probably Leela and Marilyn, you could back me up. That was easy to adapt to. That I've been using pretty steadily for 2 or 3 years. But the actual applying AI to a technical writing program, the program I'm referring to up in Virginia, I think they're probably the ones that's the furthest ahead for us. What it seems to mean for them is twofold. One, I think the technical writers, they still have to write. They still have to edit. I think most of us know by now technical writing or any professional writing is like 10% writing and 90% revision. So their job is very similar in that they're still revising content. They're still checking to make sure that the logic works with everything. I think it turns out that they end up doing a lot more data management and metadata management than you would if you were just building a document in Word. So since they're doing structured authoring, their content is set up in data modules that then go up into a spreadsheet, a database. So those data modules are coded. Their metadata is very carefully managed. And it's because they manage that data so carefully that then the AI is able to go in and grab what it needs and build what it needs from there. So I think from what I can see so far, the way that AI is going to impact tech writing, at least in the next few years, is I think we're going to end up being, I think we'll end up being those kind of making sure that we're that set of eyes because okay, my engineers sometimes will write things and forget whole words or sentences. The AI does the same thing. It can pull together a lot of information. It can definitely go through a lot of data and give you some insights on what it was able to find, but it's not really good at being able to listen to what the customer wants and develop content specifically to that with the nuance of human communication. Leela or Marilyn, do you have anything to add to that?
I think you summed it up pretty well. It's definitely a really useful tool for a lot of things. But yeah, we definitely still play the majority role in the formatting aspect. And definitely every time I've used AI, I've definitely had to go back and change a lot. So it helps with many things. And sometimes especially if you need something as simple as like rewording an email, I definitely use it for things like that. But I feel like we as tech writers definitely are still the main source for those documentation resources right now.
Yes, and I would agree. That human communication aspect is very important. Again, we are kind of the mediators between what the customer wants, right? And the technology, the AI is just a tool for us to produce, the work. And there's a lot of investment going into AI right now. For right now, it's not, it's just a tool. Like it can definitely be wrong. Even when I was like doing my homework as a student, I would catch it being wrong. So definitely it's very important to, fact check or even just like look at it with your own pair of eyes or ask a peer.
I want to add just at the end to wrap all that up. It's taking me a little bit of time to wrap my head around the idea that there's the AI that I'm used to working day in and day out. Dear AI, what's the Cisco command to delete this file? I use that all the time. Then there's the AI that we're using, like I just talked about with that tech rating program, where they're actually using it to do certain parts of the writing structure. And then when we're talking tech, there's the AI that they're trying to build into the products because we're the tech writers, we're describing products, but the products themselves, they're trying to find ways to optimize AI to make those products work better, faster, more consistently. So kind of getting your brain around the idea that it's not just one thing all the time. Um, to me, that's a little bit harder because we're kind of using it on different levels.
Thank you. That's actually super helpful because I think that's one thing I feel like, at least in a lot of my classes, I feel like there's a lot of discussion in the discussion boards about people being like, oh my gosh, what are we even doing with our degrees? Is this even worth it? What's wrong? So I think that's very, at least for myself, I don't know about anybody else. I feel like that's very comforting, I suppose, that like it's definitely like it's still kind of a dummy model. You could be like, hey, write me this, and then it's like it can't do the same as us. So thank you for that. Before I ask another question, does anybody else have questions? Jonathan, Kelsey, anybody else?
About what specifically?
Anything that you have to ask, just about like the technical writing world, L3Harris, anything like that. Any advice that you would like, whatever you can dream of, if you have any questions.
Okay. Um, how much time, and any three of you could answer this. I'm talking about Marilyn, Leela, and Melissa. How much time do you usually spend trying to communicate with engineers when it comes to uh different documentation that you have to do?
Why
Uh,
don't, yeah, Leela and Marilyn go first and I'll go last this time.
so I think the first thing, it definitely varies, you know, from engineer to engineer. Because in some of the projects I've worked on, we have engineers who are super into the documentation. They're really interested in what you're doing and they want it to look a certain way. They have a certain vision because they're passionate about what they're working on. And then on another end of that, sometimes there's engineers that are like, I have this pile of stuff, turn it into a document, please. Please turn this pile of things into a document. Both of them can either be really specific sometimes about how they want their documentation. So I guess my answer personally to that would be like, it depends on the person. I've spent, some projects going back and forth a lot with the engineers or where they want even down to minor formatting changes. And I've spent projects where they look at the document, they're like, looks good to me, let's move it along. So definitely varies in my experience. That would be my answer.
I was going to say, something that I've learned is that a lot of engineers really value their time. And so I was going to say I spend maybe a day or maybe a week, maybe an hour a week sometimes, which is not that much time. And so I have to be very quick and very intentional about my time with the engineers. So yeah, so in my experience, I would say not that much time. So prioritize.
So I'm going to come at it with a slightly different perspective. I'm working on a large scale multi-year program where instead of having a single tech writer that is supporting a team of engineers, in my program, we have a team of tech writers that are supporting the entire program at the program level. It depends on the day, it depends on the week. But for instance, the last 3 months, I probably spend 40% of my time in the lab, sitting next to an engineer going, what you doing? What happened? I see something changed. Why did it do that? I spend a lot of time going, hey, I just read all this documentation and it says this button's supposed to do that. Can you show me? I spend a lot of time saying, I really want to run this procedure. And they say, okay, go do it. And I say, no, I'm going to need somebody to go cable this up for me, please. So I've spent a lot of time with my engineers in the last few months. That said, I think Marilyn hit the nail on the head. You want to be really intentional with your time. Even though I have a lot of free access to these guys right now, if I'm coming in with a question, I want to have done all the homework I possibly can. I want to have dug into their documentation. I want to dig back into my emails from past conversations with them and my notes. I want to go and make sure that if there's any documentation, legacy documentation for a prior version of whatever I'm asking a question about, I've read that. So that when I go in there and talk to them, I can say, okay, here I'm at this level and I know this much is true. I know that I want to get over here. The product is supposed to do whatever this is. Fill that gap for me? And most engineers are much better able to give you that kind of answer, that very discrete, very specific answer between A and B. If you walk into an engineer and go, tell me how it works, they'll kind of blink out at you. But yeah, I spend a ton of time with them. We also, it's been a while, but we did the reverse where instead of me reading all of their documentation and then translating that into the user manual, we did the reverse where I took my user manual and I said, hello, engineering team, please sit down and read these 3, 4, 5, 6 books. I'll wait. So then that was an interesting kind of turnaround where now they're coming to me and saying, well, how do you usually talk about this information? How does the book normally address this? Why is this type of content in this book instead of that book? So it's a give and take. Once you build those relationships, you've got a lot more leeway, you've got a lot more access. Talking to the engineers is my favorite part, probably.
Glad to hear that. I'm glad we make your day better.
I wanted to say I saw in the chat, referring to our AI conversation, Kelsey said, I know that AI can't replace human work, but I worry about companies feeling differently. I would say, from what I've seen at L3 so far, it's actually prioritizing working alongside AI. And I would say this company is definitely not looking to replace our tech writers, definitely more using it as a tool as we discussed. But I hope that eases everyone's tensions a little bit so far.
Definitely. I think like any other advancement, it's going to be about refining and advancing our skill set. You can't just say, no, I'm going to write on a typewriter forever. Like we had to advance into the computer era. No, I'm not going to leave Word. Nope. Now I'm building out in FrameMaker or structured authoring, some other structured authoring tool. There, as the tools keep coming and they keep getting better, your skill set may have to adapt. For AI in particular, I would suggest learning at least one programming language. I would suggest learning a tagging language like HTML or XML. I would try and get in there and learn as much as you can about how data is managed in a database. You don't necessarily need to become a database administrator, but if you can understand how a database is calling information and putting it away, even just at the like YouTube video level so that you could talk in an interview about, yes, I understand this. How do you apply it in your situation? I would never be afraid of a new tool. We're never going to be replaced because it requires a human being. My whole job is translating from engineer to user and then going over to the business side and be like, hey, what is it? What's the scope of the work for this again? Okay, the engineer wants to build that over there, but our scope is this, and that fits into this book this way. It's not. I'm not worried at all about being replaced because the work I'm doing is less about writing words in a row and more about managing information to give the user the best product at the end.
Well, thank you. That even more so, I definitely, especially I think from the perspective. So thank you for Kelsey for kind of adding on to that about how companies, other companies might feel a little bit differently. But I think definitely kind of like visualizing that like you're talking to not only the engineers, but like the business side, I think really just kind of like gives a broader scope of tech writing and what it is. And speaking of skill set, because you recommended to learn, like a tag like HTML or anything like that, how do you guys in particular we're in school, so we're constantly learning things. We have professors like do this, work with this. How do you, as a professional, continue to kind of advance all of these different skills and kind of like integrate them into your work as a tech writer?
I think for me, it's been a lot of learning as I'm going, right? Because in my experience, I'll be pulled onto something and I'm like, I'm not the most familiar with this tool, but like I'm willing to learn. Like, do you have 5 minutes to show me how I can do this? Or can I pull you for a chat really quick so you can show me a little bit about this tool? I think that's how I personally expand most of my skill sets. Because like before I started here, I didn't hardly know anything. I didn't do much in IT or anything like that. I knew a bit of Python from a couple classes, but stuff like HTML I've had to learn as I go. So and now I'm pretty comfortable with it. So I think it's just don't be afraid to ask when, even though you come into a job, you don't have to know everything. They don't expect you to be an expert at every single tool. So don't be afraid to ask. That's how you can best expand your skill set, because you're not going to know if you don't have anyone to teach you. Unless you, of course, spend your free time learning online, which is another good option.
Yes, and to add on to that, I did come into this position with HTML knowledge as well as coding experience. And I would say that that opens up a lot of opportunity for you because you can kind of volunteer yourself for projects, which I have definitely done. I know HTML and I knew that there was a team like looking for someone to transcribe HTML. And I said, oh, I have experience doing that. And another important thing is learning the tools. So, there are different tools out there, but just maybe learning one code editor, one IDE, just helps a lot because you can always like transfer that skill. So even though I've never worked in Dreamweaver, I have worked in like brackets and video studio code. So yeah, I would say to expand your knowledge, definitely learn one or two tools and yeah, just get involved in like clubs that are like I think at UCF they have SHEP, SHPE, and they have free like coding classes. They will teach you HTML and JavaScript. So definitely get involved in school and again, even watch videos on YouTube and you'll like expand your skills.
I should also mention that IEEE and ACM would also have those available. Almost any major engineering club that you can think of, especially in the electrical and computer engineering side, will have programming. Will sometimes have programming activities going on as well. And if you want resources of any kind, you can always come to me as well. I'm an electrical engineer for a living, so.
That's awesome. Okay, so I have like several different ideas that are going in different directions. So let's see if I can put them all in a row. One, when it comes to tools, Leela and Marilyn are right. You kind of see what's coming down the pike and you adapt really quickly. That's one of the benefits, or it's one of the things that I think makes a really good tech writer is the enjoyment of learning just for the sake of learning. It's not something that I have to like trudge through. As soon as someone comes up to me and they're like, look, there's this new tool. I'm like, oh, okay, well, while you're talking, I'm going to Google it. So approaching tools as just another cool thing you get to go research and learn about, I think kind of takes some of that trepidation away. Another thing is you're coming out of college, they're not expecting you to know every tool, or at least I'm not. I've interviewed for the interns the last several years. When I'm interviewing an intern or even a new college grad, I don't need you to know every tool. I do need you to be able to speak about some tools, and that goes towards what Marilyn and Leela are talking about. Learn a tool that you can speak about. So if they say, tell me about when you've worked on a text editor, you can say, oh, I did, whatever. The last thing I think I want to say about tools is, oh no, I have two more things about tools. One more thing is don't forget, it's not just about your authoring tools or your graphics tools. You also are going to learn things about the tech that you're building. So when I walked into the program I'm working in now, and even the program before that, they said, we need somebody to write something. And I showed up and I said, okay, what do you want me to write? And they just handed me, like Leela said earlier, here's everything about our network. And I said, but I don't know networking. And they were like, So then I just threw myself into it. I spent last winter on YouTube teaching myself IP addressing because I couldn't parse what they had written and sometimes not even what they were saying to me with their face. So I said, okay, I'm going to dig in and I'm going to learn general knowledge about this topic because it's going to make me a better translator between my engineer and my user. Lastly, I want to remind you that your work on your degree means that when you come out of it, your expertise is not solely related to the tools you know. What I'm looking for when I have a new grad coming out is somebody who has learned how to research, parse information, learn new skills on the fly, communicate with people tactfully so that they can get information even when somebody isn't listening, they can't understand what you want. You're coming at it from multiple directions. I'm looking for somebody who writes professionally. We have lots and lots of engineers, and they write lots and lots and lots of documentation. Engineering is probably half documentation. Most of my engineers would much rather be in the lab touching things together and seeing if it sparks, but they spend half their time doing documentation. So it's not like their documentation is excellent for when an engineer is talking to an engineer. Their documentation sometimes work when that engineer is talking to a customer on the business side. What we're here for is to be that expert user, look at the system and understand how it works on a bigger scale. All the engineers are down in the weeds. They remember where that screw goes and how that wire connects. But being up at that system level and being able to document at a really high level and keep your eye on that prize, being able to take all that information together and make it a cohesive user manual for this specific user. Sometimes I spend a lot of time just digging down. Who's my user again? What level of reading comprehension does my user have? What's my user going to use this for? That probably takes up the first couple of weeks of any program. So my point being, the tools are cool, but you're going to learn it because you're going to have to, because you're going to jump in and you're just going to be like, okay, yes, definitely tell me, and I'll just AI it, figure out what the command is. But remember, don't be intimidated. You're coming out of school with a tool bag full of tools that these engineers, these business people don't have when it comes to writing complex documentation, researching it, revising it, even publishing it. Publishing is where you usually get into a lot of those tools. So like you've got the skill set. The tools are just something that's really handy to be able to talk about in an interview and say, what do you know?
Well, thank you. I appreciate that. I suppose kind of you talking about projects and then talking about, the first couple of weeks, how long for you guys does it usually take? What's kind of the give and take of how long a project is? Is it kind of like, oh, well, this project could go a year or this project could go a week or something? Is there kind of like a set schedule usually that you guys kind of generally do for projects, or is it just kind of it depends on the situation and the project and who I'm working with?
I'm going to go first. So L3Harris is a ginormous corporation. We have people all over the country, all over the world, working on different types of tech, different programs, different projects, different sections of different projects. So we tend to work in a very kind of dynamic way. We can respond to the customer's request in if they tell us we need something quick turn, we're going to get that document, whatever it is, to them as soon as we can. If they say we have this big grand plan and we want to build this thing and we're doing it on an an intermittent schedule, we can do that as well. So I think you hit the nail on the head. For us, at least, it can be anything. It can be someone can walk in and be like, I have a document that I have to put into the engineering database in 4 hours. Can you please take a look at it and clean it up? I can have people walk in and say, okay, in 3 weeks, we're going to get a day and a half to go through this whole document and restructure it before it gets turned over to the next people. I might have some foresight and somebody will say, okay, we've got a program coming up that has a period of performance, a pop of say 6 months. We need somebody for half-time for those 6 months, and I'm getting people organized and making sure I have someone to cover that time. And then, like I said, I'm working a project the project itself has been going on for decades, but the part I've been on it for 2 straight years, and I'll be on it for at least another 2 years after that.
Right. I think Melissa was probably the best one to answer that question because she's been here longer than us, and she's also worked on some of these longer term programs. In my experience, it's a similar thing. It definitely depends on the customer and also maybe a different time frame for when the project started versus when they bring the tech writer on, because that's not necessarily always when the project first starts up. They could definitely pull you on later, and then you kind of have a different way of adapting to their time frame when things need to get done versus when you came on. So varies by customer, varies by project.
Yeah, exactly. Like sometimes you might come onto a project just to edit and format a document. Other times you are creating the entire document, so you're with it from like learning the tool or the software to like actually producing the document. Um and also I've seen that sometimes like projects will get extended as well. So it really just depends.
I want to jump back, if you don't mind, and tie up one other aspect of your question. You had made the segue from, I was talking about the planning portion of a project. While there are definitely tasking that I will do on the fly when somebody shows up in my email and says, "Hey, can you please edit this document?" Almost anything that is more than a few hours of time, I'm going to spend some time doing at least sketching out some project planning. I want to know what's the requirement, what's the deliverable, what's the time frame, who's my POC, what are my legacy documents or research documents that I'm working off of. Taking the time to kind of stop the incredibly fast movement. Like Leela said, a lot of times they're showing up, they've been working on this project for 5 months, and all of a sudden they're like, man, we need a tech writer. And you're just trying to like, you're being swept along with it, taking the time to go, whoa, 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 wait, wait. I need to know these things. I need to know what's expected because there's no way you can hit a bullseye if you don't know where it is. So taking the time to really establish the expectation and making sure that you can meet those requirements. Also, I've had to bully people into doing interim reviews. I've had programs that are happy to bring me in at the very beginning, and they're like, okay, tech writer, call us if you need us. And then probably would have just left me by myself if I hadn't kept pushing the chief systems engineer and the program manager I think it was every few months. I was saying, okay, I need an in-process review. Here's a copy of the document as it stands right now. Do you have any feedback? Do you need anything else done to it? Am I missing any content? So taking the time to, what were we talking about? Taking the time to get your ducks in a row early and keep them in a row, even when things are moving really, really quickly, is really important.
All right. Before I ask another question, does anybody have any questions? You can send it in the chat, or if you wanna quickly say anything, but if not, I'll go on and yammer on. All right, I'm gonna take that silence. Ooh.
Oh, yeah, I can hop in with a quick question for each of you. I'm curious, whether it be in recent times or over a longer period of time, maybe like one tool or skill you found yourself uh, learning for the first time or using more often. I was just curious about things you were each saying about picking up new skills or learning new software, which is always a great thing that the team encourages to do. So I'm wondering if there's any examples recently of, a skill or software tool um, that you've picked up and been using.
I can start with this question. So I think a tool that I've really been using since starting at L3Harris is communication. I work with um, a lot of teams there, and we kind of all need to be on the same page. And sometimes information, it can become a lot, especially with so many revisions, and especially if you're working with other technical writers. It's really important that you first of all, are aware of, like Melissa said, what the needs of the documents are. And second of all, just communicating with your technical writers, with your managers, with your group lead, with your point of contacts from the program throughout the documentation process so that, you can produce the requirements for the customer. And yeah, so I would say communication.
I would say, I would maybe say like time management, especially if you're working on multiple programs. It can be really easy to get in a document for one program and kind of get sucked into that. But then you're like, well, I need to work on this other document too. So definitely managing, how many hours are you budgeted for this program? Make sure you're staying on top of that and not getting in the weeds too much without getting into the weeds on another program as well, depending on what your workload looks like. But kind of definitely keeping track of time and communication as well is a really big thing, because definitely want to communicate with your team as much as you can. But yeah.
I was listening so intently, I forgot it was my turn. Uh, so you specified tools, so I already have an answer for that, but then I want to jump back into the girls answered talking about skill sets. So hold on for 2 seconds for that answer. Tools wise, one of the things that was really interesting to me when I first started, my very first assignment when I came on full time was with a program that wasn't even local. They were out in Colorado, and they were going to have me work on some Word documents. And I was like, okay. I'd been a paralegal for 15 years before I came into technical writing, so I knew how to use Word. Like I can use Word, no problem. I get in on the first day, I have the first meeting, and their document, let's see, DM, their document manager starts walking me through their uh, um, style guide and their document templates. And these ones are the exception, I will say. This program has a style guide. But he started teaching me about Word in a way I'd never used it before. Using Word for complex document creation was something that I just hadn't had the need for before. As a paralegal, I probably used Word to make like 30 or 40 page documents. The documents that I was working with him on were 400 and 500 pages long. You've got to manage your styles. You've got to create new styles. You've got to manage your cross references. You cannot be doing any of that. Like, I'm just going to use the space bar instead of the tab. Like, you have to be on top of it to manage that much content in a single document. So that was a really maybe not humbling experience, but it definitely kind of opened my eyes to even the things that I think I'm an expert on. There's so much more to learn. There's always going to be something new. Either it's going to be some aspect of that tool that I didn't know existed, or it's going to be some way that that tool can be used to either document or capture information. So that's another thing towards don't be intimidated by, oh my God, there's a million tools. How can I learn all of them? You can't. And even if you thought you did, you didn't. As far as skill set, I think that I have a new appreciation for the word detail oriented. I didn't like it before. People would call me detail oriented, and I'd be like, oh man, you're just setting yourself up for somebody to find the one mistake. Um, but what I realized probably in the last 4 years is that being detail oriented isn't necessarily about being able to catch every detail every time. It's about somebody who has oriented their intention and their attention to the details of whatever they're working on. Somebody who can clear out all the rest of it and they can put that attention in a very detailed way. Definitely when we're reading some of this dry content, your eyes start to gloss over, but being able to really be intentional about, okay, I now have my editing glasses on and I'm going to read through this content line by line and find all of the punctuation and spelling and grammar and stuff. Okay, now I'm switching over to my um, large scale publication glasses. And I'm going to go, okay, well, this formatting isn't going to work because it's not going to cascade through the rest of the document. And flipping through those different pairs of glasses for whatever you're doing. That's the way that I've found to be really intentional when it comes to details. If you try and review a document for formatting and editing and consistency and voice all at the same time, you will miss all of them 40% of the time. So for me, skill set wise, the idea of being intentionally being oriented towards the details has been a kind of a shift in mentality for me.
Yeah. Awesome. Yeah, thank you each for your answers, and Melissa for the double answer too. Yeah, it was nice hearing all of them.
Well, thank you, John, for jumping in. That was a great question. Um, I think this is more directed towards more like tying in UCF and whatnot and classes. Is there, because we have to take, obviously, like we take like technical editing, writing in the tech industry and all this stuff. Is there a class that you took? And it's okay if you didn't necessarily like take like a coding class or engineering, but is there a class that you wish you had taken to help you kind of get a running jump start in the tech writing world? Kind of helped you prepare even more for understanding like the complex topics that kind of, might be thrown at you. Is there anything that you wish you had taken at UCF? Or, I know we mentioned kind of like clubs that you wish you had joined. Is there anything in that regard, any advice that you have about that?
So I have an answer for this one. I wish I had taken this class, but I wish I would have taken this class more seriously, I guess, is the project management related classes that we took in ours. For me, I kind of was just like, okay, this is my group, let's work on this document, get it out. But to me, in my experience, that class is what had most closely related to what I'm doing now, working on longer form documents with the team. I didn't really pay much attention to how I was communicating with my team and things like that. So I definitely think taking advantage of the opportunity to maybe even take a leader role on in classes like that, and schedule meetings and everything, just being more involved with the project management aspect of things while you can. And also, I definitely would have been more involved in other clubs aside from FTC, maybe like some of those engineering clubs that Jonathan mentioned. It's definitely something that I think would have been really valuable to what I'm doing now.
Yeah, I was gonna say, I know exactly which class you're talking about because I was gonna mention that class. They're the two project management classes that you take back to back where you create long documents. And I believe in the second class, you have to work to actually produce kind of like any format you want. It could either be like a manual or a website. In that class, I created a website and then created a manual for the website. And I worked in a team of, I believe, six, and I ended up being in kind of like a project manager role, and that was the best experience I had. So I don't like regret not taking any classes because that class pay attention because that was the most like working in like a real world setting. And as for clubs, I honestly, like SHEP, that's SHPE was a really good one to join. I believe it's like IEEE. Jonathan is in that one. Those are all great resources if you kind of want to learn more about the technical side. But again, just that class on project management and creating a document was probably the most valuable.
Yes, SHPE is, if you guys don't know the acronyms, SHPE is the Society for Hispanic Professional Engineers. I haven't attended a meeting for that, even though I technically would be part of the society because I am technically Peruvian from my mother. Um, and then IEEE is the Institute for Electrical and Electronics Engineers. That is the largest professional organization that is dedicated to engineering, not just in the United States, but throughout the world. And there are many, many branches. And there's also a specific society called the Procom Society that uh, deals with a lot of technical communication, not just in engineering practices, but also in professional communication. Um, I highly recommend if you are very interested in engineering writing, like myself, to definitely go check out those places if you want.
Awesome. Okay. The question was, is there a class you wish you had taken while you're at UCF? As always, I have a many-pronged answer. One, I'm not sure that there is a class in engineering that I wish I had taken, but I agree with Leela and Marilyn. I think leveraging the clubs that were available would have been a really good use of my time and energy. Getting used to being in the room, in the conversation with the other engineering disciplines is important. Is just as important as learning how to put together long form documentation. Getting used to talking to them, just being part of that back and forth, listening to the way every one of the disciplines does almost the exact same thing. I was talking to one of my uh, integration and test engineers the other day, like yesterday, about how a lot of the different disciplines will do the same type of thing where you'll have a development period and then you'll do some sort of review event and then you'll do a dry run event, and then you'll do like a more formal event, and then eventually you might even have a customer event. But they are all called different things. So just being in the room with different engineering disciplines, hearing the way they talk about how that type of work gets done, what are they paying attention to? One of the most frustrating things as I'm moving more into a management role is learning that each of the disciplines, we're all working towards the same product and the same goal, but each of us have different goals to get there. And so we're all kind of bumping into each other as I'm like, I need to run this procedure in order to say this book is done. And this person needs to get this software loaded in order to say that their software load is done. And this person over here has got a whole other goal, and learning how all of those impact each other, learning how to listen and kind of work in that ebb and flow, I think is really important. And I think clubs are probably where you would get, just get your feet wet. Um, the other thing, okay, then the class that I took that made the most impact, it wasn't necessarily in expanding my engineering or my technical background, but for me, I know that when I went into technical writing, communication classes, the thing that I was kind of even more intimidated by than the tech was the idea that once I came out of school as an English major, people were going to come at me and be like, "What's a preposition?" And I'm like, I don't know. I don't know what you want from me. I can do noun, I can do verb, leave me alone." When I took a course called, hold on, it's my favorite class on earth, rhetorical grammar. And it was hard and it was hard, but it did so much for me as far as kind of refreshing all of those ideas that we learned back in grade school about how the language is structured. But then it adds a layer on top of telling you how each of those tools in grammar affects things like tone and impact, and how we can add emphasis here using these types of structural grammar tools, that I'd take it again. It was such a good class. In fact, I was going to say I have the book on my desk, but I think I probably lent it to Marilyn. So it's maybe on Marilyn's desk. So I loved that class.
You probably did lend it to Marilyn because I think you lent it to me before too. So
Yeah, when I have new college grads come in, I'm like, you know what? I'm just going to hand you this stack of books that I love and we'll talk later. Oh, one more quick idea. If I have 2 more seconds. Going back to those classes that Marilyn and Leela were talking about with the project management, one of them focuses on a style guide, or at least it did 5 years ago when I took it. And at the time, I remember going, this is, how is, okay, I'll do it, but I don't know if this is really, I'd rather be learning about like computers or programming or engineering and how, I don't know, wrenches work or something. Um, and then I got out of school and I started working, and oh my God, being able to create, maintain, and implement a style guide is one of the key roles that a tech writer brings with them in that bag of tools to a program. Being able to quietly on the side create a style sheet for whatever you're working on. So when somebody tells you, okay, maybe it's whatever lead engineer, he says, I want it written this way. I hate the Oxford comma. You just write it down. You turn in an edit or maybe a draft, and they come back and they say, I always want to refer to this by these terms, and you just write it down. Being able to maintain that level of detail in documentation is one of the things that's going to set you apart from every other writer on that program. So that class was cool.
Yeah, that's actually funny that you guys are talking about that class because I am taking that class. I actually have a meeting for it tomorrow, and that has definitely been something that it's like the meetings every single week and communication. So I think it's funny because I'm definitely going to tell my group tomorrow, I'll be like, guys, we're doing great. I'm like, this is super useful what we're doing right now. Don't fret. So that's actually very, obviously, I know like all of our classes we're supposed to take are obviously supposed to kind of help in that regard. But I definitely, yeah, that's an amazing class. So I agree with you guys on that. I think I probably just have one or two more questions myself. if anybody else has any questions. I don't want to hog all of the questioning over here. I think one specific thing for me that I kind of want to like go back to, and it's interesting you saying this. You said that tech writing is, you know, like 10% writing and then 90% editing. Which is true because, you know, a lot of our classes focus on kind of like going back and like constantly doing like revision and rewriting stuff and all of that stuff. Um, for yourself, is there kind of any like tips or tricks or anything that like you have found that you do differently now that you're editing? Do you find yourself doing more of like a linear process, or do you find yourself kind of like jumping around and stuff? Or, you know, what's maybe is it different for each project? Do you have any kind of like thoughts on that and just editing as a whole? And any advice on that?
I'm going to go first on this one because there's totally a right answer. So both Leela and Marilyn have probably sat through my lecture on checklists. Having checklists is incredibly important in my opinion. Personally, I don't have incredibly good short-term memory. I can't hold a bunch of disparate information just kind of in working memory while I'm trying to think of all the things all at once. But even someone who is good at that, when you're talking 400 pages of content that you need to get through in 3 days, you can't hold all the details in your head. Keeping a checklist, just a basic checklist. Here's, if I'm going to edit, here's my editing checklist. If I'm going to format, here's my formatting checklist. If I'm formatting a document for this particular program that I've already created this style guide for, I'm going to use this checklist. I think is incredibly important. I think having your own personal checklist that you are updating constantly, if you find out that every time you write the word, I don't know, wrench, you forget the W, just put it on your checklist. You never have to make that mistake again because you have it right there to check off or to look at it and go, oh, right, this is, let's not use wrench, let's use color. Every time you write it in the British spelling with the U, and you're like, oh, I hate making this mistake over and over again. You add it to your checklist. You fix it every time you look at a document, and it gives you the opportunity to look at it. And on the one time you're working on a program for a British customer, you go, oh, wait, this is the right way. I should triple check that I haven't accidentally now gone back to the other extreme and now everything's written the wrong way. So checklists is the answer for me. And for everyone else. No, I'm kidding. They can have their own.
I was gonna say, yeah, checklists, definitely. I would also maybe say, stay focused on the level of editing you're doing, because especially probably most tech writers, we can really get into the weeds about like, oh, this could be a little bit better, this could be a little bit better, and sometimes you do have the opportunity to go in and make it your dream document, but sometimes that's just also not the most realistic. So make sure, you know, you are focused on the goal, the main goal at hand, and use that checklist. Maybe you have one for this level of editing, maybe you have one for a more comprehensive level of editing. Just make sure you don't stray too far off, because then you could be working on one little section for hours, and that is not the best use of time, going back to that time management thing. So that's definitely something I've had to learn, because I tend to be pretty nitpicky with documents, but that's my advice on that.
Yes, and I think it's also important to stick to a style guide. That's kind of where you want to start, just knowing the rules first so that you can standardize the documents to the rules of the style guide. And like Melissa said in the previous question, you also want to kind of make a list of um, your own style guides that the engineers are saying that they prefer. Like if they say they hate the like semicolon or whatever, then don't use it, write that down. If they say they prefer borders on images, write that down and kind of keep your separate checklist like Melissa said. And I would say a tip would be, I think, Control H. I recently learned about it. You use it to replace a word in a document with a new word. That way you don't have to like Control F and delete and then rewrite every single instance of that word.
I should tell you that I haven't met an engineer who has expressed an opinion on a semicolon.
Oh, you will. A lot of engineers actually, after I've worked with them for like a week and a half, will, very shyly tell me, I actually have a minor in English, and those are the ones you have to watch out for. They have opinions on semicolons.
Well, I don't know if that's going to be me or not because my minor's in technical communication.
I think I just have one more question, to like wrap, my questions up at least. I suppose, is there any advice that you would recommend for current, FTC members, kind of English Tech Com majors, new grads? Is there anything that you feel is like necessary for looking for tech writing internships and kind of jobs in general? Like, do you recommend like having, specifically like having a portfolio, or, how important is having all of your projects on LinkedIn and whatnot? Do you have anything to talk about like the interview process for these internships, and kind of like what do you think? And, maybe specifically for Melissa, because you've been with L3 for a few years now, is there anything that you in particular feel like that you're like, that's awesome to have, you're doing so good in that regard? Any kind of advice or thoughts on that?
I think the portfolio is a great idea. Okay, let me back up. First, you need to be aware that everything you do on the internet is visible, and we're going to look. I have one tech writing lead that I interview with often, and I'll send her a batch of resumes, and within an hour, she'll be like, okay, I looked up this kid, and he has this over here, and this kid had 3 articles in some gaming webzine, and this one I found other stuff that maybe no. So bear in mind that anytime you're interviewing, your internet persona is out there. So the best thing you can do is to craft that persona to fit your needs. I think portfolio is the way to do that. That's actually happened where I've gone to this other tech writer and said, here are the people we want to look at. And she pulled one out and she says, no, I just read 3 articles that he's written in the last 6 months about a technical topic. Uh, Getting that out there, not everybody's going to go and look. I certainly haven't. But if someone does, I would want to have that out front. For getting noticed in a stack of resumes, I would try and focus, remember your audience. And I know that we get tired of hearing that and it almost fades into the background, but remember your audience. A resume is not about describing yourself. Your resume is about describing how you can make their life easier. It's about describing the tools and the skills that you're bringing with you to make their project better, faster, cheaper, whatever it is, and tailor any documentation, any communication you have with them to that end. I think it's a hard thing to kind of wrap your brain around because we're so used to documenting information. So here's my biography in work form, and here's my resume. It's not that. It's about communicating. I see you have a problem, and here's how I would like to solve it for you. Going to that same approach in an interview, I think that you should go into an interview with 3 or 4 stories that you want to tell. And then you're just listening for questions where you can tie that in. Oh, thank you for asking me about a time when I managed conflict in the workplace. There was this one time I was working on this project with someone, the program management project, and 2 different people had different opinions on semicolons, and I had to go in and mediate and blah, 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 blah. Having that in your back pocket where you've talked about it to yourself, you've talked in the mirror, you know that story, all you're doing is listening then for the question to feed that into the conversation. Otherwise, with interviews, it can get really yes and no back and forth. I've done a couple of interviews where, like, to their credit, they did answer the questions I was asking, but they were so short that I wasn't able to get anything out. I couldn't find out, if they could speak professionally. I couldn't find out any, information about how they navigate success and conflict and documentation and all of that. So being prepared and just crafting the persona that you want to have perceived, I think is just as important when you're job searching as it is to craft your technical documentation for what your user's using.
My answer, more related to like, getting your foot in the door and getting noticed in the first place, is definitely prioritizing connections, especially while you're in school. For me, it was this club that helped me learn about the L3 Harris opportunity that got me to where I am today. But I've also had friends and my own fiance who prioritized meeting people and interacting, especially with professors at UCF, to be able to get internships and eventually full-time positions. So keeping your LinkedIn updated so you can be like, hey, I met you at this career fair, which is where I've known two people to get internships at the UCF career fair. But like, here, like, look at my LinkedIn, connect with me. So I would say, yeah, definitely keep your LinkedIn updated. And if you have the opportunity to have one-on-one time with your professors, that's always a good thing to have as well. A lot of times they have friends in the field, and they can think of you when an opportunity comes up with one of the companies that they maybe have worked for in the past or know someone who's worked for. So definitely be as connected as you can while you have the time to be so close to everybody.
Yes, I was gonna say you definitely want to embody the technical writer. Um, it's a skill, right? So you want to embody everything that comes with being a good technical writer, and you want to show that in your resume. I know that with my first internship, I got the internship because I like went out and I networked and I told them like these are my skills, like how can I help your company? And even though I came on as like a business operations intern, I told them, hey, my skills, I have a technical writer skill set, like I want to help your company in your documentation, and they let me work on their documentation, and that was a part of my part of my portfolio. I mean, and I put it on my resume. And in my second internship, the reason why that they told me, because I spoke to the recruiter, the reason why my resume stood out was because I embodied technical writing. Like all of my extracurriculars was about technical writing. I volunteered to teach kids about technical writing. All my projects were technical writing. It's a niche skill, so you really want to embody being a technical writer. You want to learn about kind of what's like in the industry, what's new, and you want to be able to talk about those things.
All right, thank you. Those were all really good answers. Very, very helpful. Before we wrap this up, does anybody have any last minute questions? Or like I said, you can type it in the chat. You don't have to say it out loud. Um, do we have anything else that you guys want to add, or is there anything that you feel like none of us, like we didn't discuss, or any last minute thoughts before we sign off?
I have a question.
Yeah, absolutely.
Hi, so my name is Anthony, and it's kind of a follow-up question to the previous one. But a little brief background on myself. I graduated from UCF with a technical communication degree. I'm currently working as a legal assistant, with the full intent of going to law school, but I'm kind of uncertain about that now and thinking about exploring a career in tech writing. What is a good way to kind of learn more about the profession, and kind of just figure out if this is something that's right for me?
Well, first of all, as I said, I was a paralegal for 15 years. So legal writing is near and dear to my heart. When I interviewed for my internship and then my job, I spoke at length about how legal writing is its own form of technical communication. It's taking highly complex technical legal information and breaking it down for a specific audience so that they would be persuaded to act in a certain way, which technical writing that's a whole side quest. Anyway, technical writing is often persuasive. We're trying to persuade the user to actually read the steps and do it the way we're telling them to, but that's a whole other lecture. So that's exciting that you are also in that intersection between legal writing and technical writing, and I would lean into it. And I definitely, I think they complement each other beautifully. Lean into that. Your question about where you could get some experience in technical writing to see if it's something that you would like to pursue. I think I'm trying to think of, well, the thing is you can create your own project. That's one of the beauties of a portfolio. So if you want to try technical writing, you can be your own um, uh, program manager and customer and the writer and the engineer and just set it up for yourself and say, okay, I want to document this XYZ website, tool, whatever it is. And then just dig into the weeds. Look up what a typical user manual has in its sections. I think Marilyn just finished working on, or has recently been working on, a quick start guide. Show that you can do a quick start guide. Maybe you want to document a maintenance manual. Maintenance was something that I hadn't really ever touched until I got several years into working as a tech writer. Dig into it. What are all the pieces? What could you replace on that piece of equipment? Do you like sitting around thinking about how you take the screw, what order you take screws out of an IO panel and then put them back in, and writing it down, and then somebody telling you it's wrong and having to go back out to the lab and double check and triple check? Like, that minutia is not the stuff that I'm complaining about. It's the stuff I love. It's the stuff that is part of being a technical writer. The paying attention, once again, putting your intention on the details of a technical project, a piece of software, a piece of hardware, whatever it is. If that lights your interest, then I think technical writing is probably a field you should continue to investigate.
Yeah, and I would just say also do what you're doing now. Talk to people who are currently in the technical writing field, and maybe they're in the defense industry, maybe there's another industry that you're interested in as well. Just talk to the people who are currently working in it and see maybe if what they're describing is something you would like to pursue further, and maybe build your portfolio off of the things they describe that they do. Like Melissa just said, like maintenance manuals, quick start guides. That's the stuff we do, but I'm sure elsewhere, technical writers do plenty of things in all different companies. So just talking to as many people as you can and kind of finding your path that way is always a good way to discover what you want to do.
Yes, I agree. Just getting exposure, and as well as, creating your own document. Pick something, like anything. It could be a sewing machine, it could be a remote control, and try writing about it. Get into the details, like be the customer and be the writer, kind of get into that mindset. And I think that will kind of give you an idea of what it's like. And use like the resources around you. So maybe at your workplace, you can maybe write some type of manual for them as a side project, just to kind of get in the feel of what it's like to be a technical writer.
Okay, awesome. Thank you so much, everyone.
Anybody else have any final questions? Thoughts, questions, comments, concerns, anything? Okie dokie. Okay, I'll take that as I think we answered everybody's questions. I want to thank everybody from FTC, for all three of you guys taking time out of your night to come here and chat with us. I appreciate it so much. I know we all do. Just kind of getting more of like a feeling of like tech writing, and I definitely think my two personal favorite questions that probably for myself, I feel like we're very helpful. We're especially like the project management class. I'll definitely keep that in mind for when I take the second project management class next semester. And then the whole AI, I think those are two very important things. So for me, thank you so much for that. I appreciate you guys for coming out.
Yeah, thank you for having us.
Yes, thank you so much for having us.
Absolutely. Well, I guess this concludes, thank you, John. Woo. I think this kind of concludes it. So I'll let everyone go so everyone can enjoy their night and have a, great rest of your night, you guys. And to everybody who came out, thank you so much as well for coming out. I appreciate it very much.
Great. Have a good night,
I say
everybody.
the same. Stay safe, everyone.
Night,
Bye-bye.
everyone.
Bye.